There's a weird thing about Horrid Henry that you can't spot after watching just a few episodes. Most kids shows are easier to watch when you rewatch them, because once you're not watching them as a kid anymore, the whole thing usually feels smaller, safer, and more obvious than you remembered. But somehow, Horrid Henry actually does the exact opposite. He's supposed to be the villain of his own show, until the show accidentally gives you reason to question that. Not Fair Studios is certain about it. Horrid Henry has a rewatch problem. Let's start at the very beginning, because this is important. The show describes Horrid Henry as this mischievous boy who lives an unfair life and feels as if the world is against him. But here's the thing, the world is against him. That's not Henry's delusion. The writer Francesca Simon sat down and wrote these words, and apparently didn't notice that they were writing the most depressing children's television concept. Well, a child who is genuinely living an unfair life and has the whole world against him. 250 episodes of it. We watched it as entertainment. We laughed at this child. We were wrong. Right, let's talk about mum and dad, because these two people shouldn't be raising children. We want to be crystal clear about this. Mum's name is never actually confirmed in the show. Dad's first name is Simon, which gets revealed at some point and is somehow the least surprising thing about him. Neither of them are referred to by name most of the time. They're just mum and dad, which is a stylistic choice that, in hindsight, makes them feel less like characters and more like a pair of recurring natural disasters. The problem isn't that they punish Henry. The problem is that they punish Henry whether he's done anything wrong or not, and they constantly refuse to hear his side of anything. And this is where the rewatch problem really starts biting. The phrase, "don't be horrid, Henry," gets deployed in this show like a verbal reflex. The issue is that it gets used in situations where Henry has done nothing wrong at all. In Where's Fluffy, Henry figures out that Moody Margaret has stolen their cat. He tells his parents,
"I've never heard such rubbish."
We can't just go and accuse our neighbours of stealing.
But it's true! You heard what the policeman said! He's gone somewhere else to live!
Henry?
They respond by brushing him off for accusing the neighbours and don't bother to check. Henry literally tells them exactly what happened, which is true, and they just don't believe him in the slightest. And they don't learn from this. They just keep doing it, episode after episode. They hear Henry speak and decide as a default setting that he's lying about something. Then there's Horrid Henry's Perfect Day, which is the most depressing episode of children's television ever produced, and we'll defend that position. Henry finds out that he's banned from the fun fair unless he behaves, so he decides to behave. He wakes up and does everything right. He tries to bring juice to his parents. Peter grabs the tray. There's a tussle. Peter spills it, and Mum opens the door and sees the spilled juice, and immediately, like a f***ing broken toy, she says the line, "Don't be horrid, Henry." She doesn't ask what happened. She doesn't wait for a single word of explanation. She just assumes. Then Henry gets kicked out of the car at the supermarket because Dad remembers the last time. Then Henry lays the table unprompted, and Mum's first response is, "You've done something horrid, haven't you?" She can't process her son doing something nice without assuming it's a cover for something terrible. And the kicker is that Henry does eventually get to the fair, but only because poo accidentally lands on Mum, and she mistakes it for Henry making a good choice. Makes you wonder how that makes any logical sense. He gets rewarded by accident, on a day where he was genuinely trying, and his parents never once properly acknowledged any of it. He says being good is really hard work at one point, with his halo disappearing, and he's right, because being good gets him nothing in this house. The system is rigged. Now, here's the one that should genuinely disturb you. Happy Birthday, Peter is a Series 1 episode where Peter has his birthday party with a clown called Colin. At some point, Colin the clown decides to do a magic trick that will make Henry disappear. And Mum cheers. She literally claps and cheers at the disappearance of her own son. Moody Margaret and Rude Ralph, who are 10 years old, both look at her with visible contempt.
I shall now attempt to make this clever little boy disappear.
Bravo! Bravo!
Oh, lovely.
The woman was outscored on basic human decency by a pair of children who spend most of their screen time causing trouble. That is where the bar is. As a kid, Perfect Peter was that annoying little brother. The goody two-shoes, the snitch. Fine, we get it. But as an adult, Perfect Peter is genuinely sinister, and nobody talks about this enough. Peter deliberately cries to get Henry in trouble. This is confirmed in multiple episodes, including Horrid Henry Gets the Blame and Horrid Henry's Comic Caper, where the show outright mentions that Peter cries specifically so that Henry will be blamed. He's developed a targeted weapon out of his own tears, and he uses it against his brother with malicious intent. But the masterpiece moment, the crowning achievement of Perfect Peter's quiet villainy, is in Perfect Peter's Horrid Day. Peter, in an effort to be horrid for a change, replaces all of Great Aunt Greta's chocolates with slugs. The genuine crime happens, and naturally, chaos ensues. Great Aunt Greta is covered in slugs. Henry is blamed. Henry's sent to his room with no television for the entire day. Peter then confesses. He actually says it. He tells Mum that he was responsible, and Mum ignores him. Hell, she doesn't even register it. Praises Peter for his perfect behaviour. The confession literally bounces off of her.
That was horrid, Henry. Simply horrid. Why, thank you.
But Mom, it was me.
Go to your room right now, Henry, and no television all day.
This woman has built such a thorough mental model of who is guilty and who is innocent in this household that incoming information which contradicts it just fails to penetrate. Peter watches Henry walk past him towards his room, and he still gets a hug from Mum. And then at the end of the episode, Henry gets revenge by putting a slug on the floor, and Peter slips on it, breaking everything. And Peter wails, "It's not fair," and Henry says, "Nope, it's horrid." This is such an Uno reverse moment, and also the most funny line in the show in sort of a dark context. A child who spent an entire episode doing terrible things, watched his innocent brother take the blame, and then has the nerve to say it's not fair when the karma finally sinks in. Miss Boudica Battleaxe is Henry's teacher and the deputy headmistress of Ashton Primary School. She's Scottish, she plays the bagpipes. Her mother, Mrs. Battleaxe, is a much kinder woman who actually likes Henry and disciplines her own daughter, which says everything. Here's what the Horrid Henry wiki says about Miss Battleaxe, with no particular drama. She pulled Brian's ear in Horrid Henry's Horrid Heroes in front of everyone, including Miss Oddbod, who was standing there watching and did nothing, despite the fact that this is both illegal and a safeguarding violation. She pulled Ralph and Graham's ears in Perfect Peter's Revenge. She gives out triple detentions to children on a fairly regular basis for minor infractions. She also, in Horrid Henry and the Football Fiend, won 2 tickets to a football match and didn't give them to the students who competed for them. She kept them for herself. There was a competition and then she kept the prize.
So I must be player of the match. You mean? Absolutely. I get the tickets.
Now that's just stealing and being petty. We can't do that. What gets us is Miss Oddbod, the headmistress. She's there, she's watching. She regularly sees Miss Battleaxe behave in ways that would result in immediate dismissal at any real school, and she does absolutely nothing. The whole schooling structure of Ashton Primary is held together by the assumption that no one will ever report anything, and so far, across 250 episodes, nobody has. But here's the thing. As a kid, you accept all of this because it's a cartoon and adults are just like that. As an adult, you start going, wait, this school has a teacher who physically grabs children, a headmistress who turns a blind eye, and a dinner lady who commits actual theft on a daily basis with impunity. Ashton Primary School would be closed down in a week in the real world. One Ofsted visit and the whole place is finished. And that's why Horrid Henry feels so strange when you come back to it. The show is built like normal cartoon chaos, but the longer you rewatch, the more every institution around Henry starts looking completely rotten. Greasy Greta. Real name? Greta Minus, the Demon Dinner Lady. She appears first in Horrid Henry and the Demon Dinner Lady, which is a Series 1 episode and somehow one of the most quietly horrifying premises the show ever produced. The setup is simple. Henry has managed to escape from the school dinner room and get into the packed lunchroom, where children bring their own food from home. This is food that their parents packed for them, their personal food, their lunches. Greta is brought in to supervise, and Greta just takes everyone's treats and eats them in front of the children while they watch. She takes their biscuits, their sweets, anything she decides counts as a treat. She announces no treats allowed and then eats them herself. She's not confiscating them and keeping them in a box until the end of the day. She's putting them directly in her mouth in front of the children whose food it is.
Dated. You ate my muffin.
Yes, I did. No treats allowed.
That's stealing. And from a child, mind you. A horrible memory to give them. And the show plays it as a comedic relief, rather than what it would be in reality, which is a sackable offence on day one. And she's never truly stopped. She keeps coming back throughout the series. She ends up as the cook at Camp Sunshine. She has a daughter called Patsy, who attends the school and is exempt from lunchbox inspections because she's Greta's daughter and can have what she likes, which is the most open display of corruption a children's show has ever casually depicted. The Horrid Henry wiki, bless it, notes that Greta can't stop herself when it comes to eating, and the show apparently decided that this was a sufficient explanation for an adult repeatedly stealing food from children with zero legal consequence. Here's what happens in Horrid Henry, every episode in varying order. Henry wants something or has to do something he doesn't want to do. Henry comes up with a plan. The plan usually works for a while, and then something goes wrong. Henry gets punished, the credits roll, nothing changes, everybody resets. 250 episodes. That's over 40 hours of television, and Henry doesn't age. He doesn't mature. He doesn't accumulate any wisdom from his experiences. The show literally resets between every single episode, which is standard for children's animation, but when you sit down and watch it back to back, the effect is quietly devastating. The show's structure means that Henry can never actually win. He gets small victories, mostly at Peter's expense, but anything bigger slides off of him like water. He gets banned from birthday parties in one episode, but the next birthday party episode exists without mentioning it. He gets banned from sweets for a month, banned from trick-or-treating, his pocket money gets confiscated, he gets triple detention, he gets sent into his room, he gets the TV taken away, and then it just starts again.
That's it. Go to your room and stay there. There'll be no trick-or-treating for you tonight.
As a kid, you don't think about this because you're just watching episode to episode and it's funny. As an adult, you start doing the maths and you realise Henry has been punished across 250 episodes of television, never had any of his punishments stick, never had any adult in his life attempt a different approach to disciplining him, never had anyone sit down and ask one question about why he behaves the way that he does. He just exists in this loop where the world treats him badly. He responds by causing chaos and then the world treats him badly in return and everyone goes home. That's the entire Horrid Henry rewatch problem, just in one sentence. The show says Henry is horrid, but the structure keeps showing us why he became that way. The Metacritic summary for the series says Henry maintains a constant war with the adults. He does, but wars have two sides, and the adults in this show have all the institutional power and none of the accountability. And the kid on the other side of this war is 11 years old and sleeping in a room full of stuff that keeps getting confiscated. Stuckup Steve is Henry's older cousin. His mum is rich Aunt Ruby, who's wealthy and spoils him without limit. Steve is snobbish, cruel, actively mocks Henry for not being rich and gets away with most of it because his mum's money protects him from any actual consequence. In Horrid Henry's Christmas, Steve walks into Henry's family home and says, "What a dump," to their faces in their house on Christmas. And the adults just kind of absorb it because it's Steve.
What a dump!
Shh. Remember what I told you about being rude to poor people? Now,
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why Steve is a brat. In Horrid Henry's haunted house, Steve tricks Henry into believing the attic of his mansion is haunted, so he gets the good bedroom. It works. Henry ends up terrified in the attic. Steve gets the room. The show does give Henry small victories against Steve on occasion, but Steve always has more resources, more parental support, and frankly, more square footage. He attends the Brick House School, which is a private school, while Henry goes to Ashton Primary, which we have already established is held together by a string and toothpaste, and of course, a complete lack of safeguarding. The class divide in this show is extremely real, and nobody talks about it. Here comes what is possibly the most satisfying piece of information about this entire show, and we want to close on it because it genuinely reframes everything. In July 2015, Francesca Simon, who wrote the original Horrid Henry books, revealed that she had never been paid any royalties or income from the television series or any other Horrid Henry projects produced by Novel Entertainment, because Orion didn't use a lawyer when selling the non-book related rights. She said it was the worst mistake she ever made. And then in August 2019, she said at the Edinburgh International Book Festival that she didn't like the show because it differed from the original books. The woman who created Horrid Henry didn't like the show and was not paid for it. That's it. That's the perfect ending to everything. The show spent 13 years, 250 episodes, putting a child through an endless loop of punishment and misery, while everyone around him got away with increasingly unhinged behaviour. The adults in the show are abusive, the school staff are criminal, the cousin is awful, the system's rigged, and the protagonist can never escape or grow or change because the format won't allow it. And the person who made him in the first place looked at the whole thing and said, "This isn't what I intended," and also got nothing for it. Horrid Henry, it only gets worse. It's pretty mental to think that Horrid Henry's rewatch problem doesn't even stop inside the show. The characters are miserable, the systems are broken, Henry can't escape the loop, and somehow even the creator got a rough deal too. We'd be pretty horrid too if we had to come up with characters like the bloody mum for free. But thankfully, we don't have to do this for free because we've got you lovely people supporting our channel. So if you like this video, or at least slightly tolerated it, then make sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and drop your suggestions in the comments below. Or maybe take a look at some of our other unhinged videos in the meantime, while we come out with the next one. Thanks for watching, Not Fair Fam, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheerio!